Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled 2019 Participation in the Merit-Based Incentive Payment System, or MIPS. Today's presenter is Bruce Mackey, Alterum's Regulatory and Incentive Program Analyst. My name is Liz Jones, and I am today's moderator. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to touch on. A PDF copy of today's slides can be downloaded right now from your GoToWebinar interface. We will be keeping everyone muted during today's presentation. If you have a question, please type it into the questions box in your GoToWebinar interface, and we will address it during the Q&A. Because of the large number of attendees for today's webinar, we may not have time to answer all of the questions. If we do not address yours during today's broadcast, you will receive an answer through email. Also, a link to the recording of this presentation will be available soon on the homepage of our website at www.qppresourcecenter.org. Today, Bruce will review the 2019 participation rules of the Merit-Based Incentive Payment System, reviewing the notable and significant program changes in this third performance year. He will discuss important changes to the eligibility requirements, including the new opt-in option, the new facility-based scoring option, changes to each of the 4 performance categories, as well as changes to the 2019 performance threshold and subsequent payment adjustments. Following the presentation, he will take time to answer any questions posed by the attendees. Please note, the information you will hear in this broadcast is current as of today and is only intended to be a general summary. With that, I will turn things over to Bruce.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, everybody, for joining me this afternoon to go through the 2019 rules of the MIPS program. We are going to dive right in. So we're here to talk about the Quality Payment Program. As you know, there are 2 different paths of participation that you can be in as you participate in the QPP. Overall, the Quality Payment Program was embedded within the MACRA rule back in 2015, the Medicare Access and CHIP Reauthorization Act. It required CMS to implement a new incentive program, and that program is the Quality Payment Program. Again, there are those 2 tracks of participation. We have the MIPS track, which is what we'll be focusing on today. That's where we saw the majority of the changes from last year to this year. But there is also the Advanced APM track. Overall, the Quality Payment Program replaced the Sustainable Growth Rate, or SGR, formula that was kind of plaguing us from year to year. Congress had to keep stepping in to suspend the huge Medicare cuts that were coming to us. So we have finally got rid of the SGR. It's been replaced with this new program. But really, overall, what we're trying to do here is get rid of fee-for-service payments, or at least shrink the number of clinicians being paid strictly on a fee-for-service payment system to be as small as possible. Up to this point, every Medicare provider gets paid the exact same amount, whether they're a good doctor or a bad doctor, a good clinician, bad clinician. Everybody gets paid the same. That's our traditional fee-for-service payment structure that we've been working in for many, many years. It is long overdue to come up with a new system that looks to differentiate providers and start to pay them on a continuum, where we are starting to pay clinicians for value over volume. So those clinicians that can demonstrate higher quality and lower cost can now have the ability to get a better reimbursement rate. And so that's really the overall framework and the overall goal of the Quality Payment Program. So what is MIPS? It's one of those 2 paths. It is the path we see the vast majority of clinicians still participating in. I think over time we will see clinicians move over into the Advanced APM track as more of those Advanced APMs become available. But for now, the vast majority are in the MIPS track. The MIPS is the Merit-Based Incentive Payment System. It combined multiple legacy Part B programs into a single program. It took the Medicare EHR Incentive Program, otherwise known as Meaningful Use. It took the Physician Quality Reporting System, or PQRS, program and pulled that in. It also took the Value-Based Payment Modifier and pulled that program into this new program as well. So within the MIPS track, we have 4 performance categories that you participate in if you're going to fully participate. You don't have to participate in every one of the categories, but it's generally a good idea to do so if you're going for a positive rate adjustment. You want to build the best MIPS final score that you can, and you want to do that by doing the best you can in each one of these 4 categories. We have the quality category, which is really just the old PQRS program, sort of retooled and remodified. We have the cost category, which is the cost side of the value modifier program. We have something called promoting interoperability, or PI. Really, this is just what's left of Medicare meaningful use. That program has changed a lot from 2016, when the Medicare meaningful use program ended, and what we have today, now called promoting interoperability. In the first year of the program, that category was called ACI, or Advancing Care Information. About a year ago or so, CMS made a change to that, and we're now calling it promoting interoperability. And then we have a 4th category called improvement activities. I will pause here and just note, as I usually do, that the MIPS program took over the Medicare EHR incentive program. There were two meaningful use programs that were running simultaneously or in parallel. There was a Medicare program and a Medicaid program. The Medicare program ended in 2016, and it has now morphed into MIPS. The Medicaid meaningful use program is still alive and well. It has transitioned into the Stage 3 rules and those objectives and measures. But it is a completely separate program. I encourage you, if you're eligible to participate in that program and have not captured all of the incentive dollars, you can still get $8,500 per provider per year in that program. It will continue through 2021. That is not part of MIPS. So it's a parallel program. Participating in that program does nothing for MIPS, and vice versa. If you're participating in MIPS that you are not participating in the meaningful use program, you'd have to do them separately. So who's included in MIPS this year? This is one place where we see a significant change from the first couple of years of the program. The box on the right, or the left-hand side, shows you those clinicians who have been a part of the program in the first 2 years, with physicians, PAs, NPs, clinical nurse specialists, certified registered nurse anesthetists, and groups of such clinicians. Now in year 3, we see that same list of clinicians that were eligible from in years 1 and 2, but they've now significantly expanded that. So this year it also includes clinical psychologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, audiologists, and registered dietitians or nutritional professionals. So we will continue, I believe, to see this list of clinicians expand over time. Again, the overall goal for CMS here is to shrink fee-for-service payments under Medicare to be as small as possible. So I think over time, we're going to see this list of eligible clinicians grow. So here's what we have as of year 3. Year 4, I suspect, will include some additional provider types. And as a reminder, the CMS definition of physician is a much broader list of clinicians that includes not just the MDs and DOs, but also doctors of dental surgery, dental medicine, podiatrists, optometrists, and chiropractors. So who is included, once we get through and determine that you are an eligible clinician type, then the next step is looking at the low volume threshold. To be included in the program, you have to have enough Medicare volume, this, again, we see a significant change in the program for the first 2 years. It has now, as of this year, added a third element. So bullets 1 and 2 on your screen right now are the same 2 that we've seen from last year. They carry forward into this year, and there's no change in the thresholds. So element number 1 is you must bill more than $90,000 a year in allowed charges for covered professional services under the Medicare physician fee schedule. And you must furnish covered professional services to more than 200 Medicare beneficiaries. And we now have a third element that we did not have in the first couple of years. You must also now provide more than 200 covered professional services under the physician fee schedule. So all three of those have to be true for you in order for your participation to be mandatory. If any one of those is not true, then you are exempt from the MIPS track this year. There's a couple places where you can check your program eligibility. One link on the slide right now for you that is a hyperlink. So if you download the slides, which are available right now in the handout section of your GoToWebinar interface, you can click on that link and that will take you to the main CMS QPP website, and there's a participation lookup tool there. There you can only put in a single NPI at a time, and it will tell you not only information for your organization, but if that particular clinician is working at multiple organizations, that will all show up there too. If you log in to that portal that's available on that same website, qpp.cms.gov, there's a sign-in section. If you log in there, that's actually the same place that you would go to manually attest to some of the your performance in the different categories. There, you can also look up the program eligibility, and there it will show you all of your clinicians under your tax ID all at one time. So a couple of different views that you can take to check your program eligibility. So what happens if a clinician or a group is excluded, but they still want to participate? So here we have another significant change. So there's actually two options there. If you are excluded, meaning you do not overcome that low volume threshold, but you'd like to participate anyway. Number one there, voluntarily participate, has been available to us each year, and that carries forward now into year 3. You can voluntarily participate. Under that option, you would submit MIPS data to CMS and still receive performance feedback, but you would not receive any of the payment adjustments regardless of that performance. So the only people that are under that model are that are able to receive that financial benefit or that payment adjustment is if you are overcoming that low volume threshold. But that data would still be publicly available on the Physician Compare website. So if you did not already know this, your MIPS performance rate each year is going to be publicly available for viewing on the Medicare Physician Compare website. This is a site that has a wealth of data already. There will be more and more data added to it, but it's really a place for patients to begin to shop for clinicians who are demonstrating high quality and low cost. So you might, even though you are not, your participation is not mandatory in the program, you might choose to voluntarily participate because you're getting great scores. And so you're demonstrating that high quality and low cost, and you might want that data to be available for those patients to see how awesome you are. So that'd be a reason to voluntarily participate. We have a new option now as well for 2019, and that is you can opt in. So if you are one of those MIPS eligible clinician types that I mentioned a couple slides ago, and you meet or exceed at least one of those 3 low volume threshold criteria, you may opt in to MIPS participation. That's very different from voluntarily participating. If you opt in, you'll be subject to the MIPS program rules and the subsequent MIPS payment adjustments. So you're throwing your hat in the ring and you're saying, even though I don't overcome all 3 of those low volume threshold criteria, I still want to participate. So still score me and still hold me accountable for that performance and adjust my payment as a function of that performance. Once made, this annual decision cannot be reversed. For this single program year, you would have that option to opt in again next year if you would like to. Details on exactly how to do this are still forthcoming. So there is a great fact sheet on the CMS QPP website that you can read all about opting in, but CMS has not yet launched the option to opt in, so we're still waiting for that information. So we know this is coming. I suspect it'll be coming very, very soon. I also believe it will be embedded within that same sign-in portal at the main QPP website. So more to come on that as CMS releases that information. So in addition to that low volume threshold, there are 2 additional exemption criteria, same as we've had in previous years. If you are a newly enrolled Medicare provider, meaning you just got credentialed in 2019 to begin to see Medicare patients, you are exempt from the program this calendar year. CMS gives you a little bit of time to get up and running as a Medicare clinician before you get sucked into the MIPS program. So you would be exempt this year, but then you'd have to look at your participation and your volume for next year to see if your participation is mandatory. And then if you're significantly participating in an advanced APM, and that's really referencing that other track. Remember in the beginning of this presentation, I talked about the MIPS track and the advanced APM track. So if you are participating in the advanced APM track and you're significantly participating, the thresholds are listed there on the screen, you are exempt from the MIPS track. There's a few different options for how you would report information to CMS to be scored on that performance. There are no changes from the prior performance year. So you can choose to participate as an individual clinician. So in this program, each NPI and tax ID combination is seen as a separate program entity. That's a big shift from the former Meaningful Use program, which consolidated all of that performance across any organization that one provider worked at. Very different here. In this program, each organization that NPI bills under would participate separately. So you can participate as an individual. You can also participate as a group, and it often makes a lot of sense to do so. Under the group participation model, any 2 or more clinicians who have reassigned their billing rights to a single tax ID can band together and be scored as a group. Under that model, you would consolidate all of your data across the 4 performance categories and submit that at the group level to CMS. And then all of the clinicians, all of the eligible clinicians under that tax ID would receive the exact same MIPS final score and the exact same Medicare adjustment. The other type of group is an APM entity. APM stands for Alternative Payment Model. That is really, it's referencing for the most part, the vast majority of APMs out there are ACOs. So if you are participating in an ACO, you are locked into group participation at the APM level. And here you are sort of a super group, okay? So your group is the ACO. And so the ACO as a whole, all of the data across all of the participants in that ACO are gonna roll up and create a single MIPS final score. And so everybody in the ACO kind of lives or dies by that ACO MIPS final score. And everybody, all of the participants of the ACO would then receive the same MIPS or Medicare reimbursement rate adjustment. There was a third option as well that we saw for the first time last year. It's called virtual group participation. A virtual group, the easiest way I can describe it is kind of think of a virtual group as sort of a mini ACO in much the same way that ACO participants band together from multiple tax IDs and they kind of work together to get the best MIPS final score that they can. A virtual group is sort of the same thing, but it's made up of solo practitioners and groups of 10 or fewer eligible clinicians who come together virtually. Doesn't matter if they're from different specialties or locations or different tax IDs. You band together in this virtual group to participate in MIPS for the performance period. So there is an election process. You wouldn't be able to form a virtual group for 2019. The application period was in Q4 of 2018. So if you're interested in forming a virtual group, I would urge you to go to the CMS QPP website, qpp.cms.gov, and access the information there on a virtual group. The application period for 2020 will open later this year in Q4, and there's a whole process that you have to go through to create your virtual group and get it approved by CMS. So one of the many decisions you have to make in this program is does it make sense to participate at the group level or the individual level? So there's no blanket statement I can say here, whether one is better than the other. It really depends on each tax ID. There's a different criteria you can look at, some different information you can look at to make that decision. One of the ways you might look at it is look at the MIPS scores for your clinicians, and then also look at their Medicare volume. So I've got an extremely basic example here on your screen, 5 different clinicians. You see their Medicare volume listed there, anywhere from $500,000 a year all the way down to $100,000. And then we have their MIPS scores, 2 different hypothetical situations, MIPS scores A and MIPS scores B. We'll look at MIPS scores A first. Under this model, group reporting would really be a bad idea because you want your highest Medicare volume providers to get the best reimbursement rate possible. So in this scenario, scores A, the providers A and B are killing it in this program. They're getting a 99 for the MIPS final score. That is near perfection. They're going to see a nice reimbursement rate bump, and you would want them to get that to get those great scores. If you consolidated everything and reported as a group, everybody in this practice would get a MIPS final score of 55.6. So while those low performers would get boosted a little bit, you'd really want your high performers to get a better score. It's the polar opposite when you look at scores B in that scenario, where we flip-flopped everything, where your clinicians that have the highest Medicare volume are doing pretty poorly in the program. It's getting a MIPS final score of 10 and 20, which is just dreadful. Group reporting would be fantastic. It would be a great idea because providers A and B, instead of getting their individual scores of 10 and 20, would get that group score of 55.6. So that would be a great idea. I think overall you'd see better reimbursement rates or a better bottom line at the end of the year under that. But really, we'll take it a step further as well. So we know one of the program rules allows us to submit data both ways. If the clinician is eligible to participate as an individual, then they're automatically eligible at the group level as well. If you submit data as an individual and as a group, CMS is going to award that clinician with the better of the 2 scores. So with that in mind, the best overall strategy then would be to always group report, unless the group score is below that minimum performance threshold. You wouldn't want to do that, and everybody would take a hit. So again, it only works if the eligible clinician is eligible to report individually, but if his or her individual MIPS final score is better than the group average, also report that clinician's individual data to CMS. With that strategy, lower performers' scores in the group would be raised by the higher group average, and then the higher performers are not negatively affected by the lower performers, because CMS is going to award those higher performers with their individual scores instead of the lower group score. So we didn't see any change in the MIPS performance periods from last year to this year. So as you participate in each one of those 4 performance categories, you have to submit data for a minimum amount of time for the calendar year. No change from last year to this year, so quality, again, is being measured for a full calendar year. Same thing with cost. That is all being built off your administrative claim, so there's nothing you have to submit, but just know that every one of your Medicare charges that you're doing right now are kind of feeding into that cost category score. Improvement activities is, again, a minimum of 90 days. When you go to attest to having those improvement activities implemented, you're attesting to CMS that you have had it implemented for a minimum of 90 days. It doesn't mean you would necessarily shut that improvement activity off after 90 days. I would encourage you to keep it going all year long. But as long as you have it in place for a minimum of 90 days in 2019, you'd be good to go. And then promoting interoperability, which is formerly known as meaningful use. Again, we have a minimum of 90-day reporting period there. It sometimes makes sense to report for a longer period of time. You want to choose a reporting period there that is going to maximize that category score. Sometimes it makes sense to go more than 90 days. You could go to 91 days and pick up some additional numerators that would translate into a better score. You might report for 111 or 214, or really even the full calendar year at 365. It's your choice. But as long as it is a minimum continuous 90 days, you would meet the program requirements. We do see a slight shift in 2 of the performance category weights. So again, you've got 4 performance categories here, but what you're building is your MIPS final score. Each one of those 4 performance categories contributes a certain weight towards your MIPS final score. The best MIPS final score you can get is 100, so think of it as 100%. And then here we can see in year 3 how much each category contributes to that MIPS final score. Slight change in quality and cost, and we're going to continue to see those 2 categories shift for the next few years. This year, quality is worth 45% of your MIPS final score. Cost is worth 15%. And again, we are going to see those 2 shift over time. Quality is going to continue to get a little bit smaller, and cost is going to continue to grow until program year 2022, when quality will be worth 30% and cost will be worth 30%. No change in the weights for improvement activities and PI. Improvement activities is worth 15% of your MIPS final score again, and promoting interoperability is worth 25%. And I don't believe we're going to see any shift there over time. They will remain weighted as they are this year. We've got, within the data submission, we've got some new terminology for coming at us this year. CMS needed to split some hairs here to determine within the quality category. We were using some terminology in the first couple of years that was easy to confuse, so CMS has helped us out here by creating some new terminology and new definitions. Again, this also relates to the quality category. We now have something called a collection type, which is a set of quality measures with comparable specifications and data completeness criteria as applicable, including but not limited to the electronic clinical quality measures, the MIPS clinical quality measures, the QCDR measures, Medicare Part B claims. We also have submission type. We called kind of everything a submission mechanism last year, if you're familiar with that term. We are now calling that the submission type, and it's the mechanism by which the submitter type is submitting that data to CMS. So there's different ways to get that data to CMS. You can do it by something called direct, which is really a reference to your EHR vendor submitting it on your behalf, or a registry submitting it directly to CMS on your behalf. We have login and upload. That's where you are maybe getting a file, a quality data file, otherwise known as a QRDA3 or a JSON file from your EHR, and then you're logging in at the CMS QPP website and you're uploading it there. We also have login and a test. That's where that's not available for all of the performance categories, but for instance, in the improvement activities, that is the way I think the majority of folks are attesting to their improvement activities these days, where you're again logging into that CMS website, and then you're just attesting to the fact that you had those improvement activities implemented. We also have Medicare Part B claims, and then the CMS web interface. We also have a submitter type, and that is just the type of person or group or third-party intermediary that is acting on behalf of the MIPS eligible clinician to submit that data to CMS. So here we have the different data submission types that are available to the individuals. It's a little bit different if you are participating as individuals versus a group. Going across the 4 performance categories, you can see on your screen right now how the individuals can participate. So again, this is most relevant, I find, to the quality category, and it really makes a big difference there, and I'll talk about that a little deeper into this presentation on why the submission type within the quality category can make a massive difference in that MIPS final score. But as individuals, You can submit it via direct, via login and upload, or Medicare Part B claims. However, that is only available this year, as of this year, for small practices. So a small practice under CMS is defined as 15 or fewer billing clinicians. It is not eligible clinicians, or not MIPS eligible clinicians. It is really how many clinicians, how many NPIs under that tax ID are billing to Medicare. If it is 15 or fewer, you can do the Medicare Part B claims submission type for your quality category. It's a little bit different for groups. Here, under the group model, again, we have that direct, so the EHR or registry can be submitting that directly to CMS on your behalf. We've got login and upload. Large groups of 25 or more eligible clinicians also have access to something called the CMS web interface. Incidentally, that is how the ACOs are submitting the data, the quality data, to CMS. And again, groups can do Medicare Part B claims. That is a change from last year or the previous years as well. There was no group reporting of Medicare Part B claims, but that is an option now, but again, only for those small practices, 15 or fewer billing clinicians. All right, we're going to roll into the different MIPS performance categories now, and we'll talk about the changes that we see from prior years to 2019. We'll start off with the quality category because that is worth the most of your MIPS final score, so we'll start off there. I mentioned already that it is worth 45%. Nearly half of that final score is coming from this single performance category. You must select and report on 6 individual measures. Again, as long as you're looking to fully participate, that is what CMS is looking from you. One of those 6 must be an outcome measure, or if an outcome measure is not available to you, you can flip over to a high priority measure. If neither one of those are available to you, you can report on any 6. But if less than 6 measures apply, then just report on each clinically relevant or applicable measure. You may also select a specialty-specific measure set. There are a lot of measures to choose from. We've got roughly 250 quality measures in 2019. It can be a rather difficult task, especially if you're a specialist, to find clinically relevant measures. CMS has tried to make that a little easier for you by selecting or by creating these specialty-specific sets of measures. You can access those from the main CMS QPP website at qpp.cms.gov. You can look at, there's quite a few specialties that have a specialty measure set that's created. So there is a shift in these measures. There's a massive undertaking that CMS has going right now called the Meaningful Measure Initiative. They're really taking a look at all of those quality measures and ensuring that they're performing the way they were intended to be. We are going to continue to see shifts over time in the quality measures. They've removed 26 of the measures from last year to this year, including some that are process measures, or they're duplicative, or they're topped out. If they're topped out, that means that there's no longer a significant difference in performance from the best performers to the worst performers. So it's topped out, and we'll see those getting phased out. They've also added some measures, and we're going to continue to see that happen each year as well. This year, we have 257 quality measures to choose from. There are, again, just like we've seen last year, some bonus points available. CMS wants your data. So to fully participate, you're going to send them 6 individual quality measures. But if you give them data on more measures, you can earn some bonus points. And I would suggest you do so. It's a great way to boost that quality score. And it's vital that you get the best quality score that you can. So you can do that by maxing out your ability to get bonus points. So you get 2 bonus points for any additional outcome or patient experience measure. If you report on any additional high priority measures, you'd get an additional bonus point there. You also, again, get bonus points depending on the submission type that you choose. There's something called electronic end-to-end reporting, that really signifies that there's no human intervention, there's no human manipulation of that data when it goes from the source of the data to CMS. For instance, if you're reporting via your EHR, that would be considered end-to-end electronic reporting because there's no kind of manual attestation of that information. You'd get 1 bonus point for each one of those measures that are submitted using end-to-end electronic reporting. Claims-based reporting would not earn you that bonus point, for instance, because that's a very manual process to submit that data to CMS, so no bonus points there. You are capped at an additional 10% there for that category, so sky's not the limit. You do get capped, but I would encourage you to over-report so that you can get as many bonus points as possible. So we've got those same requirements this year, but we've made a shift to something called the small practice bonus. We had the small practice bonus last year, but it was 5 points, and it was added directly to that MIPS final score. So CMS recognizes that small practices don't have the resources to participate in this program that the large practices do. So if you are a small practice, meaning you are 15 or fewer billing clinicians, CMS is automatically going to apply this small practice bonus to your MIPS final score. They have, although shifted it from that MIPS final score, which was 5 points last year, it is now 6 points, and it's getting added to your quality performance category score instead. You would have to submit at least data on at least 1 quality measure in order to get that small practice bonus. And they've also updated the definition of high priority to include the new opioid-related measures that have been added for this year. I have a question that just popped in. I may as well stop and answer that now, since it's relevant to what I was just talking about. The question is, do bonus points apply to practices in an ACO? So no, because the ACO quality reporting is very different there. You're using the CMS web interface. You're kind of set with your quality measures there. You kind of lose that ability to get those bonus points. And the small practice bonus would only apply if the ACO is a small practice, which ACOs are never considered a small practice. So really, the small practice bonus would not apply then if you are in that ACO. Because remember, if you're in the ACO, you're in a super group. While you in your own TIN might be a small practice, that's not how you're participating in the program. You are participating as a super group, as that APM entity, the ACO. So it would not apply there. There is a concept of data completeness that you have to be careful of as well. So data completeness is a measure that indicates whether the information submitted contains the complete set of data items. Was the quality measure applied to a minimum number of applicable patients? So you have to ensure that if you have a denominator for that particular quality measure. Let's think about NQF59. That is the main diabetes A1C outcome measure. That measure has a denominator, and that is all of your diagnosed diabetics in your practice. You have to ensure, to get a full score here on that measure, you have to ensure that you are applying that measure to at least 60% of that denominator. If you drop below that, you're going to violate data completeness, and then you're going to only earn 1 point instead, regardless of the performance on it. Small practices would continue to receive 3 points if they violate data completeness. In some of those submission types, your data completeness is going to be 100% no matter what. If you're submitting via your EHR, for instance, your EHR is applying that measure to your entire patient panel. It's not even looking at your Medicare patients. It's looking at all of your patients, and it's automatically going to score you across the board. So data completeness is 100%. It really comes into play with some of the registry measures. It definitely comes into play if you are submitting via your Medicare Part B claims. You can just kind of forget to put the quality data codes on some of those Medicare claims. If you do not put that quality data code that's relevant for that quality measure on at least 60% of the applicable patients, and here it's only looking at Medicare Part B, you fall below data completeness, and then you would only receive 1 point in large practice or 3 points in a small practice. We do have improvement scoring within this category again. We saw this last year as well. So if you significantly improve in the overall category score from 1 year to the next, so from 2018 to 2019, if there's a significant performance increase, you can earn some bonus points there as well. This doesn't look at individual measure performance. It looks at your overall quality category performance from last year to this year. And if you've got some good improvement there, you can see some additional points added to your quality category score. So we do have this concept of topped-out measures that you really have to worry about and be concerned about. Again, a topped-out measure is a measure where performance is so high and unwavering that meaningful distinctions and improvement in performance can no longer be made, meaning everybody is doing really well in that quality measure, whether you're at the top of the pack or the bottom, everybody's near the top. We are seeing CMS phase out these topped-out measures over time. We will continue to see that if they are they're topped out for a number of years. We'll see it just drop off. We will also see some of them that are significantly topped out get capped. So within each of those quality measures that you choose on to report on, you can earn as many as 10 points for that quality measure. If it is one of the significantly topped out capped measures, you can't get 10 points for it, even if you have 100% performance. The max points you can get is 7 points for that one. So we will continue to see those get phased out over time, but just be careful if you're reporting on those significantly topped out measures. If you're doing too many of those, that could really hurt your score, because instead of getting 10 points for perfection on that quality measure, you're only going to get 7. Multiply that 6 times over, and you could see a significant drop in that quality score versus what you might be able to achieve by reporting on quality measures that are not capped. All right, we've got a lot to unpack on this on this slide and the next few as we talk about some of the category considerations here. Again, the quality category is the most important one to participate in or to do the best in because it's worth the most. It is also by far the most difficult one to get right. You've got to choose your measures carefully to ensure that you're maxing out that category or getting the best score possible. You want to pick clinically relevant measures if you can. That's not even possible in a lot of instances. You're kind of limited, especially some specialists really struggle to find clinically relevant measures, but I'll talk about a good option for them as well. You might look at what's important to you or aligns with those overall practice goals and choose quality measures that align with those goals. Specialty measure sets, while I talked about those a few slides ago, they're actually rarely the best option to use, even if you are part of that specialty. You are not forced to report on the specialty measure set. And in our analysis of our data that we've collected in the last few years, we've really determined that the specialty measure sets are rarely the best option for specialists. They're a great way to center in on some clinically relevant measures, but in almost all instances, we see those specialists doing better in this category if they take a more a la carte approach to measure selection. So don't limit yourself to just your specialty measure set. Take a look at what else is available and what else you might be able to score in. Chances are you're going to be able to get a better quality category score if you kind of pick and choose your measures. So keep that in mind. I do recognize that specialists often have a difficult time finding good clinically relevant measures. Registries might be the answer there. So registries can create and use their own measures. There's a lot of specialty societies out there that are doing fantastic work, and they've gone to CMS and said, hey, we've created our own quality measure. Here's what it's measuring, here's what it's doing, here's why we think it should be available. CMS will put their stamp of approval on that measure, and it becomes now a MIPS registry measure. So it's legal to use it in this program. So that can be a fantastic way for specialists to get a better quality score, find more clinically relevant measures. Go to your specialty society and see if they are sponsoring or have a registry, and more so, do they have any of their own custom measures? You may find that that is your ticket to getting a great quality category score. So once you have chosen which measures you're going to report on, if you are reporting via your EHR, I hate to tell you, but you can't really trust the data coming out of your EHR. It really shouldn't be that way. I think the vendors will eventually get this cleaned up, but right now it's kind of a mess. Just because your vendor is certified to offer you a particular quality measure that's embedded right in their system, that honestly doesn't mean they're calculating it correctly. And I know how silly that sounds. Everybody thinks that if it's been certified, it means it's right. It isn't, not necessarily. We see a wide range of data integrity issues across the board. It doesn't matter which EHR you're using. We see issues with pretty much all of them. So once you pick your quality measures, you really need to do a deep dive into that quality measure, look at the denominator, look at those numerators, find out who's being captured in the denominator bucket, but is not appearing in that numerator bucket, and you've really got to look at why. Chances are, unfortunately, you're going to find that the quality of care was followed and there's just something wrong in the configuration. Your vendor has it wrong. So you've got to do your due diligence there and ensure that your vendor is calculating your quality measure correctly. Unfortunately, a lot of them are doing it wrong. There's also potentially configuration issues. So a lot of these quality measures that are being offered by your EHR vendor don't work correctly right out of the box. A lot of them will require some sort of data mapping or some sort of configuration that's got to happen at the practice level. Oftentimes you might have to link some link codes, so you got to ensure that once you have chosen to use it, that you have it configured properly. Check with your vendor, see if there's anything you need to do on your side to get it working properly. There's also potentially data entry issues. So we all have the best of intentions to record data in our EHRs in the right way, but we see staff kind of drift from those workflows. Each one of these quality measures is looking for specific data in a very specific structured data field in that EHR. If you are not recording that data in the right field, it's going to break the quality measure. You're not going to get numerator credit for that particular patient because you didn't put that blood pressure or whatever it is in the field that's designed to capture it. So you got to ensure that your staff are recording the patient information correctly. So again, you've got to take that deep dive into those numerators and denominators and look at who you're not getting numerator credit for and why. You may find that the issue is really just staff data entry errors. Get them to record that information in the proper structured data fields that the EHR is looking for, and you might see those quality scores boost. So it's really only after you go through the first three bullet points there that you can really then start to trust the data that's coming out of your EHR, and then you can address what could legitimately be quality issues or whatever that quality measure is trying to measure. So I talked about this a few slides ago, that data submission type really matters under the quality performance category. And really, for the most part, it relates back to the benchmarks. So remember we talked about how you can send in your quality data via claims or through your EHR or through a registry. The way you're scored on each one of those measures, it just depends on how your performance compares to an annually calculated benchmark for that measure. But each one of those submission types gets its own benchmark. So the same performance rate can mean something very different depending on how you route that data to CMS. I'll expand on that in just a moment on the next slide. You might also consider the cost of submission type. Some of them are free, like claims-based reporting. Your vendor might charge you to get your QRDA3 file. Registries will absolutely charge you. So just consider the cost of that submission type as well. And I already talked about how there might be more measure options via the registry submission type, via the EHR or ECQM submission type. And I did talk about those topped-out measures already, but I'm going to circle back to that in 2 slides as well to kind of talk about some additional considerations in avoiding topped-out measures. So here we're going to talk about those benchmarks. I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but I'm going to unpack this a little bit for you so you can understand what you're looking at. Look at the very top, see the your performance rate equals 62. So we're taking measure ID 110. This particular clinician has a performance rate of 62% on this measure. Okay, so what does that 62% performance rate mean? So if this clinician was reporting via claims, and you've got the math formula on how to determine exactly how many points a 62 performance rate would come to. If you look, follow the green, look in the grid there for claims-based reporting, you can see that a performance rate of 62 is going to fall somewhere in the 5th decile. When you run through the math formula, it would earn this clinician 5.96 points for a performance rate of 62. However, that exact same performance rate compared to the EHR-based reporting submission type would earn a vastly different number of points because that is a different benchmark. So comparing against the EHR benchmark, that would put the clinician somewhere in the 8th decile. And really they would earn 8.9 points for that performance rate of 62. And then it's again different for registry. So if you were using a registry to submit that exact same performance rate of 62, would earn 6.64 points. So you can see, depending on what that submission type is, it can really significantly affect your overall quality category score. It gets a little more complex when we look at topped-out measures. So you really need to avoid using topped-out measures if you can. It's not always possible. A lot of the quality measures are topped out or nearing topped out. So it's getting almost impossible to completely avoid topped out measures, but you do well to try to avoid them if you can. Many of the measures are topped out, but they're not yet capped. This is a screenshot of the benchmark file. You can access the benchmarks on all of the quality measures by every submission type, all in one Excel spreadsheet that you can download from the main CMS QPP website. Again, that's all of those resources are at qpp.cms.gov. So even though they're not topped out, look at that first grid. These are topped out but not capped at 7 points. We see, look at all the deciles that are missing. So registry on measure ID 5 there at the very top, near perfection, 99.99% performance rate on that measure via registry is only going to earn you 5 points. You'd have to have perfection, absolute 100% performance to get up to 10. So one tiny little mistake is going to cost you 5 points on that measure. But it gets more complex because even though they're not yet topped out, scoring options may still be limited. Look at that bottom box. So I've got a couple of registry measures there where, again, you see, even though it's not topped out yet, probably next year, the year after, we will probably see these measures actually come up as being topped out, but we're still already missing some of those scoring options. So measure selection, comparing the submission types, comparing to topped out measures, you got to really pick carefully and ensure that you're picking the best measures possible that's going to earn you the best quality score. We'll talk about for a moment here about the cost performance category. It's worth 15% of the score. We have some additional episode-based measures that are being used this year. Just like last year, they're going to score clinicians that they can on the Medicare spending per beneficiary measure, as well as the total per capita cost measure. But again, there are now 8 additional episode-based measures if they apply. There's no reporting requirement. All this is being pulled off the claims that you're already submitting to CMS. And there, again, is no improvement scoring here. We have a case minimum of 20 for the total per capita cost measure and 35 for the MSPB. It's the same, those same requirements carry through, although the minimum case threshold for the procedural episode measures are 10, and then the acute inpatient medical condition measures are 20. I highly encourage you, if you want to learn more about the cost category, to click on the link there that's going to pull up the category fact sheet for 2019. That gives you a wealth of information. Here we see those 8 episode-based measures. So how this works is CMS will create your cost category score however they can, or even if they can. So there are 10 possible measures. I don't think anybody is going to be scored on all 10. Whatever measures they can score you on, those measures will be what is used to create your overall cost category score. Sometimes none of the measures apply to the clinician. None of the 10 are going to apply, and we see that happen quite a bit as well. If that's the case, we'll see the 15% category weight shift over to quality. Again, there are some great cost category resources available for you here as well. If you want to understand more about these individual measures, I urge you to click all 3 of those and read up. There's a wealth of information in the cost category. Measure attribution is very complex and not well defined. There's no great way for you to get at who you are being attributed, which patients are kind of feeding your cost category score. Again, they've got some information here on the slide, and again, I urge you to pick up those fact sheets and those resources on the prior 2 screens. All right, so now that we've talked about those 2 categories of the MIPS program, I'm going to pause for a moment before we get to the next 2, before we get to PI and improvement activities, and we're going to talk about a new scoring option called facility-based scoring. This is new for 2019. I think it's going to be a fantastic option for a lot of clinicians. So within these categories, if you are a clinician who is facility-based, meaning you're doing a vast majority of your work in a hospital system, it becomes very difficult for you to get at your own quality data. So CMS is bringing in this new scoring option for you that I think is going to be great. So if you qualify for it, this is going to allow you to have your quality and cost performance category scores based on the performance of the hospital at which you work instead. This is not applicable to clinicians participating in any type of APM. So if you're in a MIPS APM, if you're in an ACO, this is not an option for you. So it's just those folks that are participating on their own. They're not part of an ACO or some other type of MIPS APM. So you've got the definition there as an individual to determine whether you could be facility-based scored, and for groups as well. A group can also be scored as a facility. The attribution, a facility-based clinician, would then be attributed to the hospital where they provide services to the most patients. So some clinicians are working at multiple facilities. So whichever one they see the most patients, that's who they'd be attributed to. A group is attributed to the hospital where the most facility-based clinicians are attributed. Where the quality and cost category score, however, comes from is from a program the hospital may participate in called the VBP, the Hospital Value-Based Purchasing Program. So it's that score that then creates your quality and cost category score. So that facility has to be participating in the VBP for that to be able to work for you. So CMS is going to automatically apply facility-based measurement to MIPS eligible clinicians and groups who are eligible for that scoring option and who would benefit from it. So no submission requirements would be needed for the individual clinician to be scored as a facility-based measurement, but if a group wants to be scored under the facility-based scoring model, they would have to signify to CMS that they want to be scored as a group. You would do that by submitting group-level data in either of the other two categories, the improvement activities or the promoting interoperability category. That would signify to CMS that you want to be scored as a group, and then as long as the group can be scored at the facility level, they would be scored as a group at that level. So there's a little bit of a mismatch between the hospital VBP program and the performance year. So you've got a little bit of a crystal ball here that you need to kind of forecast how your hospital, your facility is going to score in the program to determine what's going to work best for you here. I would urge you to log in at the main QPP website. When you log in, you're accessing the submission portal. There is a facility-based preview available for you there. So if you can be scored as a facility, CMS is going to give you some information there. They actually looked back in time and said, hey, if we had given you this option last year and you're a facility-based provider who's working at a hospital that has a VBP, this is what that score would have done for you. So that's a good way to determine if this is a good option for you for this year as well. So I'd urge you to go to that website and look at the facility-based preview. I would urge you to grab the fact sheet. Again, that is available on the screen right there. That's a hyperlink to it. I would click on that if you're thinking about facility-based measurement. Grab that fact sheet and really read up on it. I believe is going to be a great option for you. So again, CMS is going to automatically apply this to you if they can. That might give some of you some hypertension, but fear not. CMS is only going to do it if it's beneficial for you. So, because some hospitals don't receive a score in the VBP. So for a variety of reasons, they might fail to meet the requirements under that program or some other reasons. So in these cases, CMS would be unable to calculate. So even if you are facility-based, if that hospital doesn't earn a VBP score, then they wouldn't be able to do this for you. So at least for this first year, it gives me a little bit of pause to say, you know, as a clinician, I'm only going to rely on this new facility-based scoring option. If you can, I would urge you to also submit data from your own system. So, because again, just like we saw between individual and group reporting, if they can score you as a facility-based provider and you also submit quality data individually or within your TIN, CMS is going to award you with the better of the two. So we are seeing the VBP program or this facility-based scoring be a very good option because the hospitals often score really, really well in the VBP program. But just note that if you also submit data on your own, CMS is going to award you with the better of the two. So use that safety net to ensure that you're getting the best score you can. All right, we're going to change back now, flip into the other two performance categories. We have the improvement activities. Again, it's worth 15% this year. You're just attesting to the fact that you've completed these activities or that you've had them implemented for a minimum of 90 days this year. Each one of the activities, there's 118 of them to choose from this year. They're all either medium weight or high weight. Medium weight gives you 10 points, high weight gives you 20 points, unless you're in a small practice or a non-patient facing clinician, or you're a clinician located in a rural or health professional shortage area. Those point values are doubled. So the medium weight ones are worth 20, the high weight are worth 40. You max out this category at 40 points. If you earn 40 points within the category, that's going to earn you the full 15% or 15 points towards that final score. So a small practice, for instance, could attest to a single high weight activity and you would max out this category. One change from last year, or really in the first couple of years, we had there was some bonus points you could earn within the promoting interoperability category if you were attesting to a short list. I think there was 18 or 19 of those improvement activities that would earn you bonus points in PI. That is no longer the case. They have severed that link, so there's no bonus alignment there between PI and the IA categories. All right, moving into the fourth category, promoting interoperability. Really, again, this is just what's left of meaningful use. We do see a significant change here in the scoring of this category. So it's still worth 25%, just like it was last year, but you must be on the 2015 version of your EHR this year. So you cannot get any PI score if you remain on your 2014 version of your EHR. You're going to make sure that you're upgraded, or at least during the queue to get upgraded to your vendor's newly certified 2015 version. Again, there is 100 total category points, or that's where it gets capped. You want to get as close to 100 within that category to get the best score that you can. But I think we're going to see some overall category scores dropped a little bit because they've really retooled how they're scoring within this category. Last year, we had a base score and a performance score and a bonus score. They've really eliminated all that, and it's really all performance-based now. There's a little bit of bonus that you can get for reporting on some of the new opioid measures. But previously, you got half of your PI score just by the base, and it was relatively easy to get that base score. That's gone now. It's all related to performance moving forward. We also had two measure sets to report on previously. We had what were called the transition objectives and then the regular objectives. The transition objectives are now gone. We only have one set of objectives and measures that you're reporting on now. They're all based on that 2015 edition certified EHR technology. We have the 4 objectives listed there, and I'll show you them on the next screen as well. There are 2 new opioid measures that earn bonus points this year. So here we have the 4 objectives that are left and all of the measures that are within them, and then the number of points that you can earn within them. You'll note that the SRA, security risk analysis, is no longer listed as one of the measures, but it's still an annual mandatory requirement. We're never going to get away from that. You've got to be doing your security risk analysis every single year. If you do not attest to having your SRA done, you're going to get a 0 in this PI category. So I talked about how that scoring has changed. It's all based off that performance now. And because of that, I think we're going to see a slight dip in everybody's PI category score. This is where performance really, really matters. You've got to ensure that you're capturing every single numerator that you possibly can to max out this category. There are some exclusions on some of the measures. If you claim an exclusion, the points for that will be for that measure will be allocated to other measures, so you don't miss out on those points by claiming the exclusion. Just the other measures will be worth more to pick up those points instead. Here I've got a scoring example. In the interest of time, I'm going to blast through that, but you can circle back to it here to kind of understand how CMS kind of calculates that PI category score between all the measures. And again, there is reweighting available. There's 2 different ways that you can be reweighted, and by reweighted, I mean that the weight of the final score for the PI category would shift to another category. Excuse me. In this instance, the 25%, if you are reweighted, would shift over to the quality category, making that worth a lot more, and then the PI category at 0. You can be automatically reweighted. So if you are any of the following MIPS eligible clinicians, if you're a non-patient facing, if you're hospital-based, if you're working in an ambulatory surgical center, you're a PA, an NP, a clinical nurse specialist, or a CRNA, you're automatically reweighted. This now also includes all those new clinician types. So really the only folks that must participate in this category then are the physicians. And remember, physician is a much broader term. It's not just the MDs and DOs, but they're the only ones that must submit PI data. Everybody else, for the most part, excuse me, will get automatically reweighted, meaning CMS does not expect to receive PI category data from those clinicians. It sometimes makes sense to override that automatic reweighting. You would do that by submitting PI data anyway. So if you're an NP who's scoring really well on those measures, it might make sense to submit PI data to CMS, even though they're not expecting it from you. They're going to automatically reweight that 25% over to quality, But if they receive data from you, that signals to CMS that you want to override that reweighting, and they're going to score you on that performance that you've submitted, on that data you've submitted, and then score you appropriately. There's also application-based reweighting. So for example, clinicians who are in a small practice, there's other reasons you can apply for that as well, but if you're in a small practice and you don't have an EHR, you're going to want to apply for that reweighting. CMS will approve that, and again, that 25% would shift over to quality, so you don't take a big zero in that category. If you've been affected by your EHR not getting 2015 certification, or a natural disaster has hit, a fire, there's a lot of different reasons that would allow you to apply for and have the category reweighted to quality. Those applications are not live yet. We should see that the application for reweighting be available on the QPP website probably next month-ish or so, but you'll have until the end of the year to get that in. There's a complex patient bonus that's also applied. CMS recognizes that if you have a significant number of highly complex patients in your panel, it's a lot more difficult for you to do well in the MIPS program. So if you're one of those clinicians, CMS is automatically calculating this behind the scenes and would apply 5 bonus points to your MIPS final score for treating highly complex patients. All right, let's move into the 2019 performance threshold and payment adjustments. We've learned about all the performance categories and what it all means, but what does it mean to your reimbursement rate? So again, all of that data is going to all feed into that MIPS final score, and then that MIPS final score gets compared against an annually set performance threshold. Last year, that minimum threshold was 15, meaning you needed to get a MIPS final score of at least 15, or you were going to take a penalty. You're going to get a reduction in your Medicare reimbursement rate. This year, it's doubled at 30 points, and we're going to continue to see that go up over time. There's something called an exceptional performance bonus. Last year, if you scored at least 70 points, you were in that bucket. That afforded you some additional monies. That is now set at 75 points this year. And then the payment adjustment could be up. Last year was plus or minus 5%. This year it's plus or minus 7%. However, the program is budget neutral, right? So what that means is the folks that are getting penalized are paying for the incentives for the other folks, the folks that are performing well. So there is a scaling factor that comes in, though, if the pool of people getting penalized is not big enough to fund the top end. So we saw this in the first few years. We're going to continue to see this for the next couple of years, I think, where the penalty could be as low as 7%, but we're not going to come anywhere near to plus 7% for the top end adjustments. It's going to get scaled back significantly again this year. In the first year, which was plus or minus 4%, the top adjustment was 1.88%. In 2018, which we just are closing out, we're waiting on those scores, which we should see in the next few weeks. We're probably going to see a top end adjustment of maybe 2-ish%, 2.1, 2.2, we're not really sure yet. 7% is probably going to be somewhere in the realm of a 3% gain at best. So we don't really know what it's going to be, but that scaling factor is going to come into effect again this year. Depending on how that score shakes out, you can see where you would fall here. And you've got to be at least at 30 points, and really you got to shoot for the moon. Don't do the minimum. You want to get the best MIPS final score that you possibly can. You definitely want to be at least at 75 if you can. You want to take part in those the exceptional performance bonus. But really it goes beyond that. And one thing I want to make you aware of is what's going to happen to that minimum performance threshold. It's at a fairly meager 30 points right now. It's not that difficult to get over 30 points. You can participate in just a couple of the categories really and get to that 30-point mark. Don't take the easy way out. We are still working in what's called the transition period that's going to continue for 19, 20, and 21. And through those years, CMS is going to set that performance threshold So next year, it's probably going to bump up to maybe 45 points, and then maybe 55, and then 65. We don't really know where it's going to be, but CMS is going to set that rate for us, that minimum performance threshold. After 2021, so beginning in performance year 2022, that performance rate is going to be the average of the prior year's performance. So when we look at the data we're collecting, and even the data CMS is putting out from the first performance year, the average is really high. So what is right now exceptional performance, meaning at 75 points, that's probably going to be the minimum threshold a few years from now. So that if you are scoring below what is today exceptional performance, you're going to take a pay cut. Don't be in that bucket. The way you would do that is by shooting for the moon during these transition years. Don't just go for 30. If you have the ability to do more, do it. Because while you can shoot for the moon with that low threshold, if you miss the mark, you're not going to take a penalty. And really what you're doing is practicing right now so that when that performance rate skyrockets to between 70 and 80 points, which is what I'm expecting it to be, you'll find yourself performing really well because you've taken the time to really perform well during these transition years when that rate was much lower. If you are at all struggling in this program, you don't understand, you need help, there is free help for everybody who wants help. So CMS is funding organizations like myself, like Altarum here. They are funding folks across the entire country to be out there, being the boots on the ground to help you with this program. So if you need help, please ask. If you are a small practice, you can come to us. The link down at the bottom, the QPPresourcecenter.org. Click the Join Now button. Start to work with us in this program. We have created a custom portal where you give us a little bit of information about yourself. We will then create a customized project plan that kind of gets through all the weeds, right? There is so much information here and so many resources, but all of it's not going to apply to you, and it can be very difficult to determine what exactly you need to do well in this program. So we've created a portal that can create a customized project plan based on your specific situation. Link with us through the QPP Resource Center. Not only does it do that, but it links you to all of my colleagues who are also experts in this program, that you can pummel us with every question you could possibly think of in this program. We are here to help you, so use that resource. Aside from that, it also gives you, by connecting with us, access to something called MIPS. That is our own proprietary scoring platform. So we know exactly what CMS is going to do with this data, and we can tell you what your MIPS final score is going to be before you send it to CMS. Think of it as a sandbox. You can, all year long, you can manipulate your data, give us different 90-day reporting periods, give us all your quality measures, and we can very quickly, just immediately tell you what your top 6 are. So get access to MIPS. It is a valuable tool, and it is free through the QPP Resource Center. If you are a large practice, there's help for you as well, although we just got word that some of that large help is kind of shifting from the Quinn QIOs who have been helping you. MPro here in Michigan has been helping the large practices. They're going to shift that over to the QPP Resource Center, the Service Center, but there is help for literally everybody. If you're not really sure who can help you, just come to us through the QPP Resource Center. Even if you're a large practice, just link to us and we will guide you to the technical assistance organization that is out there ready and willing to help you. I've got a quick poll for you. I know I'm just a couple minutes over here. CMS, as part of our funding, wants us to see wants you to tell them how we are doing. So if you would please take a moment right now to make a selection there on how satisfied you are with the information I have presented today. Hopefully you guys are rating it a 5 or a 4, but certainly your honest feedback is valuable not only to us but to CMS as well, so they can kind of score us on how we are doing. I'll leave that open for just a moment. Thank you to those of you who have already made a selection there. I'll leave it open for just a few more seconds in case anyone else wants to chime in. All right, we'll close that out. Thank you again. And we'll get to the last slide if it will allow me. There we go. If there are any questions, I think I've already, we just had the one question I answered that has come in so far about the bonus points applying to practices in ACO. This is not your only opportunity to ask questions as well. We're here to help you. So don't be shy. If you've got a question, come to us. We can guide you appropriately. You've got my contact information. Feel free to email me directly. You can call me directly, but then the QPP Resource Center as well. That gives you that access to a wealth of great tools and that MIPScast scoring platform, that sandbox I just talked about. We've got the email address to my colleagues as well at qppinfo@altarum.org. Again, if you've got questions, just come to us. We are here and ready and waiting. We've got the expertise to guide you through this program appropriately. All right, with that, I will close out for the day. Thank you so much for attending today. I look forward to seeing you on our future webinars as well. And again, good luck participating in the MIPS track in 2019. And if we can help, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you and have a great day.